Hey beauty, how would your health change if you believed that your body was designed to heal? This is what Dr. Ben Rall and I discuss on this episode of the podcast. Dr. Ben Rall was born and raised in the great state of South Dakota, where he owned and operated one of the largest chiropractic and wellness clinics in the United States. For the last 18 years, he has worked with businesses, churches, and corporations of all sizes and created an unmatched corporate wellness program for today's business model. Dr. Ben Rall authored two books entitled Cooperative Wellness and Designed to Heal. He is also the host of the five-star rated podcast Designed to Heal. He currently resides in Orlando, Florida, with his wife Megan and two children, Jack and Grace. He is the owner of Achieve Wellness Clinic, where he currently practices and sees hundreds of patients every week in the Central Florida area. He is committed to educating and empowering individuals on how to apply a vitalistic model of healthcare to their lives and live well. You are in for a treat today because of my guest, Ben Rall. Before we start the show, I wanted to remind you of my free gift for you. Go to herholistichealing.com/free to download my free guide, Holistically Healthy Woman, 4 Steps to Move Away from Modern Medicine for Christians. With all that being said, let's go meet Dr. Ben Rall. Welcome to Her Holistic Healing. Do you want to move away from modern medicine and learn healthier alternatives for your family? Do you want a healthy body? Do you want to live the life that God intended you to live? Hey, I'm Alexandra. I love Jesus. I'm a wife, mom of 3, author, and registered nurse with years of experience in clinical research. When I started experiencing chronic health issues, I was confused about all the different diets and conflicting opinions. I felt anxious because I couldn't solve the mystery of my health until God showed me that He is the source of true healing. In this podcast, you will learn Bible truths and holistic treatments that will help you to stop relying on pharmaceuticals. You can experience true lasting healing that will allow you to make a greater eternal impact in your home and community. So what do you say we take a break from the mind-numbing humdrum busyness? Let's rest in my God, be our healer and helper. Hey beauty, I have a very special guest for you, Dr. Ben Rall. Thank you so much for being on the show, Dr. Rall.
Of course, excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk to your audience.
So I was reading a little bit about you on your website, and it said that you were the official chiropractor for the 2012 London Olympics. What was that like?
Well, of course, it was an amazing experience, and I was blessed to be there and very thankful. Had a very much an amazing time. The interesting part of that story, I think, is that I initially had, my whole dream was to go to the Olympics, but as an athlete. I was training for the 96 Olympics. That would have been the Atlanta Games as a boxer, believe it or not. And so during my time of training for that, I was at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and I got sick, and I didn't really know what was going on. And at this point in my life, I didn't know anything about holistic health or healing. And so I did the traditional medical route, and I went in, I had a bunch of tests done, and they gave me a bunch of labels, put me on some medications. Those medications really disrupted my body. It really messed up my digestive system. I ended up gaining 70 pounds. And when you're in a weight sport like boxing, you can't go from 165 pounds to 245 pounds. That's a problem. And so I got removed from the training program, and my Olympic dream at the time then was over. So then fast forward, 15, 20 years later, where I was able to go to the Olympics as a chiropractor for the wellness aspect of that through USA Wrestling, USA Weightlifting, and USA Judo. So I never got to go as an athlete. I'm sure that's amazing, but it was really fun to be able to go as a doctor as well, and I got to bring my family with me and explore London, and really had an amazing time. So I look back on that, and I'm very thankful to go. And a lot of people ask me about that because it's kind of an interesting thing to hear. Not a lot of people have had that opportunity. But I would just say, and again, not to sound like I'm not grateful for that, but I love the work I do every day. I mean, it was a neat experience, but to serve people and to serve patients in my office every day, one of the things I learned, and I've worked with a lot of elite athletes and professional athletes over my years. Down in Florida, I take care of a lot of baseball players. There's a lot of baseball players down here, and soccer players and things. And it's like, they have their thing that they're great at, right? They're an elite athlete, but I take care of elite moms and elite bankers. I mean, just everybody that's a child of God deserves the care, and it doesn't matter if they're a professional athlete or a stay-at-home mom. To me, they're child of God, and so I'm just honored to be able to take care of people. And but that was an amazing experience. So yeah, thanks for asking about that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So was it your experience having to heal from all that? Was that what led you to become a chiropractor? Or can you
Yeah,
talk a little bit about how you got into
it's
all of this?
exactly what happened. So I didn't grow up with an understanding of holistic healthcare and at all. I would say just the traditional kind of medical family. Although, of course, I'm 45, so back then there wasn't as much medicalization as there is today. They've certainly won us on pills and potions and jabs all day long. But so I didn't. It wasn't like we were a heavily medicated family, but we just did what everybody kind of typically did. And so when I came home after that, I put on these medications, and I really was sick and suffering for about 3 years. I'd go back and get my scans redone, and my lesions in my digestive system were either getting worse or staying the same. I'm still having all these symptoms. Now I'm on more medications, kind of a typical road that you hear. And then somebody said you should go to a chiropractor. And honestly, at the time, I wasn't negative about it. I'd seen chiropractors over the years, especially being a boxer and kind of for athletics, but nobody had ever really explained to me how the body was designed to heal. And I didn't really understand how a chiropractor was going to help me with that. And so I met this doctor, and he was the first person that sat me down. Even though I've been to a lot of doctors, he was the first doctor that sat me down and explained to me that God designed my body in a particular way. My body's designed to heal, and my body didn't just forget how to digest food when I was 17 years old. And there's a cause to that. There's interference to that. Now, in my case, this isn't what happens to everybody, but in my case, I had pressure on the nerves that went to my digestive system. And that interference between the brain and the body is very simple, but it's almost too simple for some people. That interference between my brain and my body was disrupting my digestion to the point that I was having all these incredible symptoms. So he began the process of adjusting me. Now, mind you, I'd been on these drugs every day for 3.5 years, and I was only getting worse. Within 1 week, I got off the medication. I lost 67 pounds in 4 months. 2 months after that, I went in and got my scans redone, and my lesions were completely healed. It's amazing, but it's not a miracle. The body's designed to heal. We're divinely designed to heal. This is just the facts of the matter. If you're listening to this show for the 5 minutes we've been talking, your body has literally healed trillions of things that you have no idea that it's even healed. It's killed cancer cells. It's regenerated liver cells. It's digesting food. It's making new blood cells. Your immune system's on the prowl. Like, it's amazing. And so when that happened to me, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. How had I seen all of these doctors? Nobody ever said anything about this. They never once looked for this. They never suggested any of this could help. All that they told me was I have to take these drugs for the rest of my life. So it was kind of a moment for me where it was almost like a fork in the road. Like, what am I going to do with this information? Turns out one of the medications I was on is no longer on the market. It is attributed to killing 33,000 people a year. So I became very passionate about this, and that's when I decided, in part to become a chiropractor, because I just really felt a responsibility to let people know what I didn't know. And I've had that burden since the day that happened to me, because I know that I'm certainly not the only one that's just simply never been told. And that was a burden that I feel very, very real about for people, because I know if they know that many of them are going to make a different decision. Many of them are going to look for other ways. And so, of course, now that's, 25 years later, and, 20,000 patients later and 20 years in practice later. But that's the story.
Yeah, I hear so many stories. I mean, similar to yours. I mean, people choose to go the conventional route, and then all of a sudden it's like they're opened up to this whole new world where, depending on what people believe about God, they realize that the body was designed a certain way, and that even if they don't believe in God, just the complexity of the way the body is and how everything is connected, that the body can do a lot to heal itself. When you were talking, I was thinking about the people who are struggling with their health a lot, who have tried like functional medicine, they've tried going to a chiropractor, they've tried many things, and they're still struggling a lot. So what would you say to those people?
Yeah, it's a great question. again, doing this as long as I have, I would say it's a little bit cliche, but and I have to be careful how I say this because I've seen very real situations with people. And you know, you know, my podcast is called Designed to Heal. I've written a daily devotional by the same name. My shirt that I wear, almost literally, I feel like whoever the Steve Jobs or whatever that always wore the same outfit. I wear a T-shirt every single day almost that says Designed to Heal, and it's because so many people, even these people you're talking about, these wonderful people that are exploring maybe holistic approaches to healthcare. My experience has been that they still, many of them, I'm not saying all of them, there's situations that happen. We're all going to die. Nobody lives forever, at least not physically. Okay, I understand this, but I would just tell you, when you talk to me about healing, until people fully understand, in my opinion, and really grasp that they're designed to heal, that can be a roadblock. So what I often will say is they're still operating from the medical mindset. So they're maybe don't take prescription or pharmaceutical drugs, but they still say, what should I take for my depression? What should I take for my digestive problems? What should I take for my allergies? What should I take for my sleeping issues? What should I take for my we've really just, in many cases, we've replaced medicine with just taking a supplement, taking a vitamin. And I think that, in my opinion, in my experience, that's a miss. All right. It's still I need something from outside of me to fix me. I need something outside of me to heal me or cure me. And many people are still living in tremendous fear. They really haven't come to this full, I guess, faith. I don't know. And I'm being careful because I'm not in these people's shoes. But I have seen too many miracles and too many healings happen for people. And a lot of times, my first office was called Inspired Chiropractic. And people ask me why I called it that. Why did I name it that? And I'll tell you exactly why I named it that. If a person, there's a way of describing the difference between motivation and inspiration. Motivation is something that somebody has to make you do. Inspiration is something that a person can't stop you from doing. When I meet people and they're victims and they claim I see this in people of faith as much as I see this in just people that are not of faith. And they're like married to their diagnosis. They come in and they say, my migraines and my diabetes and my blood pressure, and it runs in my family. And they're just these, honestly, and I know I get pretty fired up about this, but it's just a victim mindset. They're blaming everybody. They're blaming their genetics. They're blaming this and that. They're still going to the doctors. They're still doing all these tests. They're living in fear. They're living in diagnosis. They're living in labels. And I'm just telling you, if you're going to try to chase both rabbits, if you're going to try to straddle that fence, if you're going to try to just medically treat your body, but you're going to use, a little bit safer pills, potions, and lotions, I think we've still missed healing. So I know your question was, what do I say to those people? I say, man, you have to understand, deeply, deeply understand how God designed you to heal. And you have to understand that the power in that just outweighs any man-made, from a pill, a pharmaceutical, to even a supplement. Been doing this for so long that you used to have to try to convince people, hey, you should take some vitamins. Hey, you should, stop eating junk food. Now I feel like I'm trying to talk to people a lot of times to get them to cut back. They've turned holistic health into an idol. They think they have to do a cold plunge, red light therapy, 300 supplements, 900 therapies, or God won't heal them. Well, that's as ridiculous as taking 86 pills. Now, some people can't handle this conversation because it feels like, I don't want to think about it like that, because they haven't realized yet that they're still looking for something else to fix them. If I can just get the guru doctor, if I can just get the guru supplement, the magic detox, this and that. And again, I'm not anti those things. Okay, it's just like Book of James, like it's faith without works is dead. Like, it takes both, right? It's by faith and grace alone that we are saved, absolutely. But then out of that becomes the works that God has prepared for us in advance. Okay, so the reason that we care for our bodies is not so we can live a long time. It's not so we can have a six-pack. It's not so we can look good in the picture. It's because our bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit. They're a gift from God. They were bought for for a price. And so it's a form of worship in a sense that we care for them, not idol worship of our health, not idol worship of ourselves, but of glory to God, saying thank you for what you made. And that's our faith. Now, out of that, I may choose to eat well. I may choose to do a detox. I may do, X, Y, Z, but I have seen people heal from, MS and become like, I'm talking diagnosed, lesions on their brain and spinal cord to be completely healed. And it wasn't because they had some magic supplement. It was literally just a miracle. All right. And so I find that many people feel disempowered. So it's a long answer to your question, but I find that if we don't understand this, we're literally playing almost the same game as the medical model, and it's disempowered. We're handing our health over to somebody else, and we haven't really taken kind of full faith and full authority of our understanding that we're fearfully and wonderfully made, created in likeness and image of God, designed, divinely designed to heal. So that was a long answer to your question. Hopefully it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I can see what you're saying. I think I did a recent podcast episode on this. It's kind of like, I mean, if a person doesn't believe that they were designed to heal, if they can't even believe that they can get better, it's kind of like you're kind of at a standstill, because if you're just gonna sit there and be like, okay, I was diagnosed with this, or I have this in my genes, like, you can't really go much further. You have to first believe, if you're a Christian, and you're probably a Christian if you listen to the show, that God is a healer. The God of the Bible, he healed in the Bible, and he can heal today.
Yeah.
You have to first start with that belief. And that goes for anything. Like, if a person is broke and they think that, oh, I'll always be broke because my father was broke and my whole family's broke, I'm just going to be broke for the rest of your life, then you probably will be broke, because you won't get to that point where you will tell yourself, no, you know what, my father was broke, but I can do this. I can get this job. I can learn this skill. But if you never have that belief and you just give up, then you're probably going to be sick and broke. And that doesn't go for everyone. Yeah. But I see what you're saying. I mean, there has to come a point where you have that deep belief in God, and that you can heal, and that God designed our bodies to heal.
Yeah, I want to be careful. I agree. I think you're articulating it very well. I want to be careful, because what it can sound like, if you're maybe listening to us, is it can sound like we're saying, well, you're not healing because you don't have enough faith. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we need to we need to the level of understanding and that we have regarding how we're designed does absolutely affect our healing. And in the secular world, maybe that's called sometimes placebo, or just there's mind, the power of the mind and power of things like that. So there's other areas that dabble. I'm not really talking about that, but what I would say, just as a kind of a thought on that for people, is in very simple. And you did a great example. You said, using poorness, or maybe take it out of health for a second, physical health, and said, like, hey, if I have maybe a relationship, like a marriage, and it's really struggling, it's really difficult, we're having a hard time. Well, but my belief that our marriage can be redeemed, that it can be restored, that it can be healed, right? Like that's the only. Like, that's actually the only beneficial mindset to have. That's really the only beneficial approach to take. If all you think about is, well, this is it, we had a bad fight, I guess it's over, nothing can be done. Again, as a person of faith, we say, well, no, that's not how we're called to believe. We're called to believe that those things can be redeemed, and nothing is too hard for our God. So he doesn't look at cancer and say that's too much. He doesn't look, I mean, come on. That's why I wrote the devotional, because I just went through every healing scripture, because honestly, I got a little bit frustrated, especially working with people of faith, the people of, Christians that were almost like, they wouldn't believe it. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So I went through every healing scripture in the Bible and pulled them out. And I mean, there's amazing story. I mean, there's unbelievable stories of healing in the Bible, things that we even today, even through great medical advancements, we still can't do. We can't take paralyzed people and walk and raise people from the dead. So God did, and Christ himself did healings that we still don't even come close to understanding. And so I just really encourage people, please don't be upset. I'm not saying you don't have the faith to heal. I'm saying your faith will actually make you take the actions. If I believe my marriage can be saved, then I'll take the steps to help my marriage be redeemed. If I didn't believe that I could lose weight, then why would I ever try? If I don't believe I can heal, then why would I ever try? Now, there are principles. Just last thing here. There are principles, right? If I, gravity is gravity. If I have whatever, I'm holding some keys in my hand and I drop them, right? 100 times out of 100, those keys are going to drop to the ground. That's a law that God made called gravity. If you have pressure on your nerves and, a chiropractic adjustment takes the pressure off of those nerves and those nerves are causing your problem, then you're going to heal. If you have a nutritional deficiency and you replace that deficiency with a sufficiency, and that was, stopping a certain pathway from being able to heal, then yes, you're going to get better. So there's that reality that is real. That's in this physical realm, but that's not the totality of healing. It's not the totality of how this works. And so we have to really engage. It's part of it, but we have to engage this. I guess I would just say the rest of healing, which is the things that we were talking about: that faith, understand how our body's designed to heal, and there's very real physiological implications to that.
So if we take this on a very practical level, you being a chiropractor now, let's say that you came to see you as a patient back then, before you were now, what would you tell yourself back then? What would you do for yourself?
Yeah, are you talking about like when I was unwell? Is that what you mean?
Unwell. I don't know when that was, like prior to 2012, or when you said you were like 70 pounds overweight. That.
What would I say to myself then?
Yeah, what would you say to yourself?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The great thing is I get to do this every day. I mean, these are my conversations with the patients every single day. It's exactly, you really hit the nail on the head there. I mean, I talk to myself every single day. I see me every single time when a patient comes in, because I know that they've either been lied to, unfortunately, by today's medical paradigm, which is not built on truth, or they've just been, they're just ignorant because nobody's ever taught them. As crazy as that sounds, the average person has an understanding of health and healing at a 9-year-old level. That's about a third grader. And so it's not surprising. I'm not saying people are dumb. I mean, we've just been bamboozled and brainwashed by the medical system and pharmaceutical industries and all of those things. And that's just real. And that's reality. People can get mad about that. It's just the facts. I'm not here to upset people. It's just truth. So what I say is really almost exactly what the doctor said to me, which is, hey, Ben. And the doctor I went to happened to be a man of faith. And he said, Ben, God didn't make a mistake. He didn't make junk. You didn't have this your whole life. Something changed. There's something interfering with the normal process of how your body's designed to heal. If we can find that and we can, improve it or reduce it or fix it or whatever the situation is, then you'll heal. And that's not because he was a magical healer. It's because that's just the laws that God created. I mean, if the plant needs water and you give it water, and then it gets better. And so I really spend most of my time trying to reveal to people and help the scales fall off of their eyes. It's amazing how many times people have looked at me after maybe an initial consult and said, how come nobody's ever told me this before? Right. And so in many ways, what I do is incredibly simple. I remind people, or for sometimes the first time in their life, I tell them very clearly and with as much, just purpose as I can, that they are in fact designed to heal. And then to your point, I think, or to your question, that sequelae, that ends up bringing us down. The quality of your life is based upon the quality of the questions that you ask. So if I understand I'm designed to heal, then I might say, well, then, okay, if I'm designed to heal, then why am I seemingly not healing, right? Why am I having these digestive issues? That's a really great question. The medical model often says, right, well, you have this, they say inherently, well, you have this drug deficiency, right? Or here's this label diagnosis is really just a constellation of symptoms that they put a name on. And so the medical approach takes you one way, a holistic approach takes you another way. Understanding that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, created in the likeness and image of God, then I'm going to say, well, then what's going on here? What do I need to eliminate? What do I need to get into check? I remember when I was first in chiropractic school, one of the professors got up and he said, if a person lives to be 100 years old and, and then they die, the medical system says, how did they die? And, chiropractic asks, how did they live? Chiropractic is a study of life, right? And holistic healthcare is a study of life. We're interested in life. We're interested in that and vitality and how do we support that. We're all going to die, like I said earlier. So it's not about that. I believe that God has our days set. He knows the hairs on our head. So I'm not really trying to move the needle on how long I will live. God's already decided that for me. However, I do have an influence on what that looks like in between that dash, if you will. And so I try to just encourage people so much. So many people are so beaten down. They almost have the complete opposite. Many people have more faith. This is crazy to say, but many people have more faith in disease than they do healing. I share this story every once in a while where, if you maybe went out of town and maybe you for a little few days or a week and you forgot to water your plants or something, and you came home and your plants were all droopy and maybe the leaves are brown and your windows closed so they didn't get some sunlight. But let's just say in this instance, they needed water. So, assuming that it's not too far gone, you give your plants a little bit of water, and lo and behold, a few days later, they're perked up. The leaves are perked up. The color's coming back. You're probably not going to call the news station and say, you need to come to my house and do a story because we've had a resurrection of plants, right? You just naturally assume like it's not a leap for you. You expect it to happen. You have faith that that plant is going to heal. Yet, many people have more faith in a plant's ability to heal than the body that God gave them, and so that's definitely something that I try to speak into to people, right? Admonishment, high octane faith, speak life into people, look them dead in the eyes, and tell them maybe for the first time in their life that they are in fact designed to heal. Some people have never heard that. Maybe some of your listeners today, even though they love your show and you talk about all these wonderful principles, it might be new for them to maybe hear it and maybe in that way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It makes me think of, I'm wondering because, the reason why I asked you on the show is because we share so many of the same beliefs. And what I'm wondering is, back in 2020, and after that too, and even now, I just get really frustrated because I feel like when I talk to some people, I feel like I'm speaking a different language. Mm-hmm. And when everything happened in 2020 and 2021, I was just, it got to a certain point where I was like, something is definitely not right here. But so many other people that I was around, they thought everything was just the truth. Whatever they were hearing in the news was the truth. And it's just so frustrating. Like, why do you think that people are not questioning or wondering, or like if you try to talk to people, like, do you ever feel like you're speaking a different language and you can't even reach those people at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think any of us that have maybe walked through that year, those years, 2020, 2021 and stuff, I think a lot of us, obviously not everybody, but a lot of us like you felt just what is happening. Like I felt like I was in the twilight zone. Many of us lost relationships. We lost, family relationships. There's been a lot of devastating stories I know that I have in my world. And so I definitely would say that but I would see it really more like the parable of the sower and the seeds. Right. I guess it's been hard. I've done this for a long time. So if you would have met me earlier in my life and earlier in my career, I would say that I had a harder time with this because I thought I could, I don't want to say save everybody because I don't see it like that. But I thought that, hey, yeah, I could explain this to everybody. They'd kind of get it. They'd go, wow, I didn't know that. And then, just like me, when I found out, I was like, wow, what? Okay, crazy. This is great to know. And then I realized, that people, not everybody feels that way about it. So it really was just really more learning about humanity. I mean, you talk about sharing the gospel, and these are just areas I've had to kind of grow in because, here you could say the same thing with sharing the gospel, which is obviously to me, infinitely more important than some of the things that I teach about. But people still can hear the gospel and not respond. And so if that can happen, then certainly people might disagree with me on about healing or nutrition or something like that. So but here's the rub to that is, so that doesn't mean that I've given up. It doesn't mean that I've become indifferent to it. I'm still as passionate. I still speak with as much urgency because I just shared this the other day. I believe that there's one person that saves, and that's God. He does it all. And so we don't save ourselves. We can't save ourselves. That's not how it works. And so that being said, with people, I don't know who he's going to save. So I share the gospel with the same fervor to everyone, and then the rest is up, in the sense, if you will, up to God. Like, I've done my job, I've sown the seeds. So I had to kind of divorce myself from the outcome. I couldn't bear the weight of them not, agreeing with me, or them saying, oh, okay, I'll do this, because it was just too much and it wasn't mine to carry. It's, my job is to care but not carry. Like, I've never healed anybody. I don't do the healing. God does the healing. I teach them. I remove interference from their bodies. I provide chiropractic adjustments. But I can never, they all can heal, but I don't know if they're going to heal. I don't know how God's going to do that. But I can come at it with the energy and the expectations and the enthusiasm that they are, in fact, designed to heal. So it's a good question, and some days are better than others. I would be lying if I told you that I was not seasons during COVID where I wasn't really struggling emotionally, because I was really disheartened. And if I'm just going to be straight with you, I was really bothered by a majority of how the church world responded. I was disgusted. And so it revealed a lot of people that actually didn't believe what they thought they believed. There was so much fear. I think, to probably get to your question even better, is so much of this was just fear, self-preservation, our own lives, our own selfishness, our own fear. And that's not Christian. That's not Christ-like. We're called to fear one thing. That's to fear God. That's the beginning of all wisdom. The rest of it is man. The rest of it is, the evil one and Satan whispering lies to people, and they believed it. And I think it exposed how bamboozled we've been, how much faith we have in pills, potions, lotions, and jabs, and it really was disgusting. I'll give you one example. As believers, the COVID mRNA technology. In the process of making those products, they use aborted fetal tissue cells to test them. It's not in the product, but they use it to test the product. So in the creation of those, they use aborted fetal tissue cells. As a believer, as a person of faith, as a follower of Jesus Christ, that's not okay. Not okay with me. So that's not going to be part of my life. That's not going to be part of my body. That's not going to be something I'm going to participate in. On principles alone, on godly principles. I don't believe in that we abort babies to make medical products for me to take. So because of that answers that question for me. But see, a lot of people didn't know that, or if they heard it, they didn't want to believe it. And the reason they didn't want to believe it was because they didn't want to have to then make a stand. They didn't want to have to take a position. They didn't want to have to be, voice up and be a voice for the voiceless. And so they let their own fear and their own propaganda, and it exposed a lot of that. Now we can sit here a few years later and realize almost every single thing that mainstream media told us was a lie. Now, I felt like I had a head start, and I knew it was bunk from the beginning just because of my work in healthcare for so long. I read all the studies, I read all the, test trials, and I could see that it was a lie. And that was even them not even telling us everything that they actually knew. And so I think to your listeners and to your question, I would just say that's always going to be with us. It's even like in the scriptures, I've struggled with it over the years, like, when he says, the sick and the poor will always be among you. I was like, man, I just personally, I hate that. I'm like, oh, no, because when I read other scriptures, it says, he came to town and all were healed. I'm like, yes, so I have there's this dance, there's this tension between some people are just going to be resistant. Some people are so afraid. They've gotten so brainwashed that at least my skill set, I don't know how to help them be set free. I still will share the truth. I do that, but then the rest is really up to God. So again, I don't know why today I'm giving such long answers to your questions, but
no, it's good. So do you feel like, it's hard to tell because there's certain people that still believe certain media outlets, and it's hard to tell. Do you feel like the tide is turning? Do you feel like people more people are realizing that how much we were lied to, and how much the medical system is very
it's a good question. A lot of
pitfalls. Do you think people are realizing that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I want to. So I would say certainly more than there was. When you look back, I think here we're just post-election even, and I think you saw some of the response by people to say maybe they've had enough in certain areas. Here in Florida, I'll give you an example. In Florida, there was an amendment that was being proposed regarding abortion, and it needed a 60% to pass. So if it would have passed, it would have made abortion up to essentially, up to birth of, legal here in Florida. And it didn't pass, thank goodness, but it got 57% of the vote. It needed 60. So yes, it didn't pass, but make no mistake, we still had 57% of the voting people vote that way. So we still have a lot of hearts that have some feelings about how we treat the unborn child that are really disturbing. So I would say, is there people, you can look at even some of the uptake of, for example, the boosters. Those numbers that I see with the boosters are down below 10%. I see 6%, 7%. So it appears that a lot of people have woken up to say, hey, maybe that's not what I want to be doing anymore. But I don't know if it's gone. People, yes, I do believe that. I don't know if I can say the tide is turning. I don't think that the medical establishment's going out of business anytime soon. Although, you see some things with Bobby Kennedy getting put in the HHS, and then right at like 4 or 5 o'clock when that nomination came out, you saw pharmaceutical companies stocks dropping fairly significantly. So people are waking up. Of course, it's never as fast as we want. It's never as it's never this awakening that we hope happens as fast as it is. But that's really, I've had to come to terms that that's not my job. I don't know how fast it will happen. I don't know. God's given me a certain dominion and a certain platform, and the people, the few people that I get to speak into. And so I just do what God has called me to. Just like when you reached out to be on this show, it's like, yeah, of course. Hey, if there's somebody that I can be helpful to and I can share the truth about God's laws of health and healing, then I'll do that. If I think too much about the other, like I'll get discouraged, because it can sometimes feel like, do you ever remember that story? And I know we've got to wind down for your show, but have you ever heard that story of, it's like a person's walking down the beach and there's all these starfish that had kind of washed ashore. And they're dying because they need to be in the water. And so this lady's walking and she's kind of picking one up and, putting it back in the ocean, and picking one up and putting it back in the ocean. But there's like hundreds or thousands of these starfish. And this guy stops her and he says, why do you even bother? Like, you're not going to be able to save all of these. It doesn't even matter. And she had a starfish in her hand and she said, well, it matters to this one. And so that's where I've had to live. I don't know, I can't save everybody. I can't teach everybody, but I can teach those that God brings to me to try to speak the truth to. And then after that, I really don't know. I've had to just, come to the conclusion that it's just not my job after that. Let God be God. So I'm not perfect at it. I have my days. If my wife was here right now, she'd certainly say I've had my days where I really feel like I don't know if we're making a difference at all, and I don't know what's happening. But my faith just requires me to keep going.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful perspective. I mean, we're called to be obedient. We're called to love God and love others, and we leave God with the outcome. I mean, I think that's beautiful. I mean, we can't worry so much about where everyone else is going. We just do our part, and God will do His part with what we decide to be obedient with, right?
Yeah, amen. I agree. You say it much better and faster than I do.
Well, no, I really appreciate your responses. So as we come to a close, we didn't get a chance to talk about your books or your podcast. Do you want to tell our listener where she can find you, and a little bit about your books and your clinic and all that stuff?
Yeah. Thank you for letting me do that. So if you are interested, I did write a daily devotional called Designed to Heal. It's 365. I went from Genesis to Revelation, and I pulled out healing scriptures. I can't say all of them because there's more than that, but I took one, and it was interesting. There's one from every book of the Bible. So there's not any books of the Bible that do not speak about God's laws of healing. A lot of it has to even do, especially with like anxiety, fear, mental health even. And so that book, it's a daily devotional with some action steps. The best, you can buy it anywhere. You can buy it on Amazon, and you can buy it on iBooks and all that kind of stuff. You can buy it directly from me at drbenrall.com. So that's just drbenrall.com. I wrote another book called Cooperative Wellness. That's a little bit more of a higher level kind of book on, the concerns in the traditional medical model, and then some options for you to look at in your life. that are more holistically minded. And then our podcast is called Design to Heal. You're going to be a guest on our podcast. And so it's people like you and others we bring on. We've had kind of the whole spectrum of experts on there. Sometimes it's just me ranting and raving about healthcare, but it's called Design to Heal. We're a faith-based wellness show. We've been doing it for about 5 years, for 400 episodes or so, about 1 million downloads. And so I really try to speak, I'm pretty intense on that show sometimes. So, if you're faint of heart, it may be a little bit aggressive, but I just feel like we live in a time where, people need to hear the truth. And so we drop episodes Tuesdays and Thursdays. So Mondays and Thursdays. So if that's of interest to your audience, I'd love to have them give a listen to Design to Heal.
Thanks so much. Any last words of encouragement or anything for our listener?
Well, the last thing I would just say to you, if you're listening to this, if you have, you brought this question up earlier, well, I feel like I've tried that. I would say it tells us in the scriptures that we work out our salvation. And that sounds a little crazy, right? Like how? What does that mean? I mean, I thought I was saved. And when it comes to eternal life and salvation, yes, that happens at the moment that you're saved. But I think any of us have understood that have gone through that process. We're always learning. We're always growing. So there might be some things you heard today that are some hard truths. Some things you heard that maybe you're like, wow, I didn't think about that, right? And there's that moment where it's kind of like, do I want to go down that trail? Do I want to think about those things? And I would encourage you to do that, right? And sometimes there's two sides to this when it's like truth and grace, okay? So sometimes we have to do a little study and understand the risks involved in today's healthcare model that's lost its way. Like remain open to that, learn about that, because part of this is you have to learn the dangers. The only reason that God's grace is so amazing is when you learn the weight of sin, when you understand that that's what put him on the cross. So without understanding the weight of sin and our need for repentance, grace isn't that interesting. But when you understand that, grace is unbelievable, okay? So you have to have both. So partly, you need to understand how far we've strayed the way we approach health in the general culture. And then on the other side of it is the amazing creation that you are in the likeness and image of God. And so I would also encourage you to learn about that. Understand how amazing he made you. Be fascinated by God's creation, the thing that he looked at and was very pleased that he made. And so I think it's both of those. And sometimes we don't want to look into those things because it just seems overwhelming, or you say, well, I'm not a doctor. You don't have to be a doctor. It doesn't matter. But you can just learn. And so I would just encourage people to, open their minds and their hearts to what God wants to say to them regarding health and healing. So thanks for the opportunity to share.
Thanks for listening today. If you like what you heard, would you take a minute to leave the show a review? If you want to connect with me, you can join me in my free community. The link is in the show notes, or go to herholistichealing.com. Matthew 11. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls.
For you is easy and my burden is light.
This content is for informational purposes only and is not meant to be medical advice.